Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the stream. This is Diagnose Your Chess. This is a weekly show that I do with CoChess and Chess24, where I invite a new student every week, someone I've never worked with before, and we talk a little bit about their chess. We go over their games, and I try to give my honest advice and opinions on how they should try to improve their chess. So today with me, I have Gustavo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
And
you for having me.
real quick, maybe you could let everyone know like your age and where you're from.
So I'm 16. I'm from Puerto Rico. I've been playing chess since I was little, but I only got to about 1,000 online strength. And I got back to chess about a year ago. And since then, I've been able to go to a couple of over-the-board tournaments and started taking my chess a lot more seriously than when I was younger. And I've been able to get up to about 1,600 online on chess.com.
Cool, cool. So nowadays, like, how are you? What kind of time control are you usually playing when you play online?
So usually I'm playing 15-10. I don't really like to play Blitz a lot because I feel like it makes me play worse when I'm trying to play seriously on Rapid or Classical.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll usually play about a game or two per day. And I'm also playing, at least recently, I started playing 60 to 10 games, so 60 minutes with 10-second increment
Nice.
once a week in a friendly league I created with a couple of friends of mine.
Cool. So you're playing those like once a week? Nice, nice.
Yes, once a week.
Um, awesome. Yeah, it's really important to just try to play like in general longer time control games. Just spending more time thinking about the moves that you're making, and always useful. And are you doing anything for like your chess training, like tactics or solving or anything like that?
Yeah, so usually I'll start my day with about an hour of tactics online on chess.com. After that, I'll play one game of 15-10. And if I see that I lost or that it was a complicated game, then I'll try to analyze it quickly without the engine, and then turn on engine analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And but if not, if it was like a straightforward game, then I'll play another one, or I'll just look at the analysis really quick and then play another one.
Gotcha.
After after that, I try to see if I have any time in the afternoons to work on my openings because I have a tournament, an overboard tournament at the end of the month, and I'm trying to prepare a little bit for that. So I'm working on my openings now that I
Wow.
have that sort of uh, time related thing to dedicate my openings to,
What
right?
kind of tournament
And
is that going to be? Like over the weekend?
yeah, weekend tournament, 90-30,
Oh, nice.
open, semi-open because there's a limit of players, but it's gonna be really cool.
Cool, cool. We'll try to prep you. I see San Miguel in the chat is saying that you are the founder of your school chess club. That's awesome.
That's
And that
true.
you've
Yeah,
taught a bunch of people how to play chess.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I and it's actually San Miguel has helped me a lot with that, and also shout out to Diego Martinez who might also be in the chat. They've both helped me a lot to build the chess club and to teach other students how to play chess and sort of lay that foundation, which has sort of created a small chess culture in our school.
That's great. I mean, one of the best ways to learn something is to actually be forced to teach it to others. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a great excuse to like learn some classic games is to just have a class once a week where you're like, all right, we're gonna look at some classic games, and then you'll have to research them yourself and try to understand what happened. Um, Now, Sam Miguel also said
definitely.
you're 2600 in tactics. Is that true?
Yeah, on chess.com, 2650, I think.
Oh wow. Do you also do the
Yeah,
puzzle rush?
a little bit. I'm not very good at it. I think the most I've gotten is 21 on a 3 minute.
Oh okay.
Yeah.
So you like to like take your time then on the problems.
Yes, yes, I do. That's another thing that probably contributes to like sort of a higher tactics rating. I'm not scared of taking like 5 or 6 minutes on a tactic. or as much as it takes to try to get it right and understand the problem.
Okay, that's good because you're working on your like classical chess, which is longer time control, and that's something where you're gonna have time to calculate. It's not so much about finding tactics super quickly, but rather like delving deep into the position and like actually seeing some lines. So I'm happy that you're doing that. And then beyond tactics and playing, do you do anything like reading any books or like watching videos or anything like that?
Yeah. Usually my free time, like if I'm eating lunch or just sort of trying to rest a little bit between classes, I'll watch some John Bartholomew. I really
Mm-hmm.
like his climbing the rating ladder.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
I'll watch some Agadmator, obviously. And in terms of books,
Obviously, why? Obviously, I know.
I mean, he is the chess personality, but in terms of chess books, I'm reading Chess Strategy for Club Players by Herman Gruden.
Oh,
I
okay,
started
good book.
reading it
Nice.
just recently, and it's a really, really good book. I've barely gotten into it, but from what I've read, I really love it.
Awesome. And how often are you reading that?
I just whenever I can. I don't think I've read it for at least the last week, but I got it about a month ago, and I've read about 5 chapters on it.
Okay. I mean, that's a good book. That's a really good author, Herman Gruden. I like his stuff. So, I mean, it sounds like your tactics might be good. So if that's like the thing to work on, I would say like just try to read a little bit every day. Do you work like with a physical chessboard?
Yes, I always try to play through the variations on a board and for the games.
Awesome. Do you have it like set up or do you have to set it up every time?
The chessboard, do you mean?
Yeah,
Or like the positions?
the
Yeah,
board.
yeah, sometimes I have like a stationary board and I also have a travel board. Sometimes I like to sit down outside a little bit to read so I can clear my mind
Mm-hmm.
too and sort of, breathe fresh air. But
Okay. Well, that's awesome.
yeah, so sometimes I use a travel chessboard, sometimes I use the regular one.
Okay. Try to have a board set up like at all times. If it's always ready to go, it'll be much easier to use it. And then if you just have like a soft goal, like you just want to read a little bit every day, like 3 4 pages or 3 4 examples, right? Like doesn't really matter. You'll get through it really quickly. Um, but okay, so yeah. Also, I wanted to say, yeah, John Bartholomew has a great channel. He has some really instructive videos, and there's some really good stuff out there. Um, okay, well, let's start looking at maybe some of your games. So I guess today I'll try to give you some guidance. Although I feel like you're already kind of like on the right track. Have you played a 90-30 like classical game before?
Yeah, so I started playing over the board classical tournaments I think in October of 2019.
Mm.
And I've played only about 3 or 4, I think like 4 or 5 actually.
Wow.
Usually weekend or tournaments.
Yeah, that was like the worst time to start playing because you need
Hmm.
some time to like adjust, and then immediately everything was cut off.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, at least you got some experience, so
Hmm.
that's good. It really is. I mean, a whole different thing playing online versus over the board. Okay, so I just picked this game at random. This looks like Petrov. Do you remember this one?
I think yeah, this is the one of the 60-10 games I was talking about actually against San Miguel who's in the chat.
Oh, nice.
Um,
That's funny.
yeah. I played this 60-10 game and I played it on a over the board, sort of playing it on my phone and also over the board to try to visualize a little bit better.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So, yeah. So, I mean, I'm guessing you already analyzed this game a little bit.
Yeah, I looked it over with Samuel and with the engine, but I haven't looked it over. I think what it deserves, sort of thought, deep thought with other players.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have some idea of where you think? Because I know you ended up losing this game, but where do you think you ended up going wrong?
Well, there was sort of this plan that wasn't the most sound, which was playing c5 and then knight e5. But I also hung a pawn, and I actually kind of wanted to talk about that because this was a 60-10 game, and it was a very simple blunder. Like, it was just a blunder that should have never happened,
Hmm.
which I think is something that maybe happens a bit in my games.
Oh, I see. So he plays bishop f6, you
Hmm.
went rook e1, then just snap, snap, and takes on c5.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, we just don't really like pay attention to our opponent's ideas. It's like very common, I'll tell you, at pretty much all levels. It can happen. It's just much easier in general to spot your own tactics, just psychologically, because you're playing with white's pieces, so you're looking for your own opportunities. And then even though your opponent is making moves, we're not always like really paying attention to what they're doing. So one kind of skill that I think players often develop over time is just you learn to appreciate exactly what the opponent is threatening, and it's not too difficult to explain. Basically, what happens for me is like as soon as a move is played, like bishop f6, my brain just like immediately jumps into like a tactics check. Like what's their next move? Do they have a threat? And then I might see like, for example, oh, knight takes c5 might be one way to win a pawn, or like bishop takes e5. I mean, not always. I'll definitely miss stuff, but the idea is you want to kind of get into the habit of always kind of immediately checking, like, oh, what are they? What are they now threatening? Um,
Uh,
Basically, with any move, and you want to do the reverse as well. Like, what are they now hinging? Because every move is always going to leave some squares behind, and so a lot of times, if a move is a blunder, you can kind of spot it just by understanding, like, well, which squares are now left undefended. This becomes more obvious, with like pawn moves. When someone makes some random pawn move, our brain might like immediately see the square that's now kind of like undefended, and you kind of learn to do that with piece moves as well.
good.
Um, so yeah, I mean, basically it happens, and like whenever I think about me doing these things, it's because I like wasn't, I don't know, fully focused or something, like not being really really careful. I think that's just like pretty typical. And what can you say? Over time, it gets better. Let's talk about the c5 move though, because this one I would say feels more like a strategic mistake.
Yeah.
Um, and what do you think is the problem with this move?
I think maybe it's a little bit too committal. I have some nice tension on the center. I have a flank pawn attacking a center pawn, and maybe c5 is sort of fixing this pawn structure, which is maybe a bad move. Bad move.
Yeah, basically right. You're kind of letting go of all your pressure against black center. And in fact, if we think about the Petrov, conceptually, this is like your whole idea, because this is the position that we're getting, and it's like a symmetrical position, except black got an extra move, knight e4. And the whole point of white's play is to argue that this move, knight e4, is not good for black's position because the knight can be undermined with a move like c4. And this kind of is white's entire strategy. I think like knight c3 is probably a move here because this puts more pressure on the knight on e4. And then if black takes this one, bc, of course, white is going to be able to trade off the one of the c pawns if you want. Or here, you can advance c5 and argue that like you have this open b file for your rook. That's going to be like pretty annoying. So this is like a structure that white can kind of argue you have like a kind of a small initiative in. I think the way you played it is reasonable with queen c2, because here you're kind of following the plan, putting pressure on the knight on e4. And so this is basically what is supposed to inform the strategy. Now black plays f5, very committal move, but very logical move, because he wants to control the e4 square. And yeah, when we play c5, then it's like we give black a free hand now on the king side, because there's no more pressure in the center. So in general, when the opponent has somewhat weakened their king side, like with this f pawn, we kind of want to keep some pressure alive. So the queen really loves using this diagonal at some point to kind of put pressure on the king. Um, so yeah, my first instinct in a position like this would be something like taking in queen b3, and then just kind of putting some pressure there, reminding black that d5 pawn has to be defended. Um, And then yeah, knight can still come to e5, and I think we're in good shape. Okay, let's see what happens. So here, rook e1, took this one. Now knight takes d5. Oh, some tactics
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I had sort of calculated. I hadn't seen obviously knight takes c5 and that my pawn was hanging. But after this, I had sort of calculated all of the variations and I determined that I was okay. Although I missed a key move at the end.
Oh, I see. So let's see what happened. Wow, this was really sharp. So check here, takes, oof, queen d1. Huh. Queen f1, bishop e6. And yeah, I guess black's rook is kind of more active here. And now bishop c4, kind of a big threat, huh?
That's sort of the key move I had missed. Because sort of in the middle of the variation back in queen c4, I had noticed that at the end my opponent could play queen d1, but I thought after queen f1 I would be okay because I would just be playing something like b3, bishop b2, defending the rook while also developing and attacking the queen. And I thought I would be okay, but I had missed totally this idea of bishop e6 and bishop c4.
Oh wow. Huh. Okay, I'm just wondering. And if you play bishop e6, if you play b3 here, then what happens?
I um I believe I had considered this move alongside with the move I played in the game, which yeah was f4. I think my opponent could sort of just take, and then after something like bishop b2, play something like queen c2 and attack my bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And that at the end I had nothing conclusive. My knight is still hanging on a8, and now my bishop is also hanging. So I decided not to go for this line.
Yeah, I guess you're losing some pawns here. Actually, I realize you can also just take the knight right away. Then on bishop b2, get this like counterattack. And yeah, it seems like black keeps the extra piece here. Wow, yeah, it turned out really sharp. So this is like mystery. Got to go back and see. Like, wow. Um, it's a cool tactic. I mean, knight takes d5, knight on c5 is hanging. If queen takes, you have bishop c4. That's a nice point. Um, so knight takes d3, takes. You saw the check. King h8 takes. Just missed queen d1 at the end. Hmm. And if not queen
Thought for
d1, if
sure.
black goes like, let's just say like knight d3 or something.
Um, I can't see knight d3 on my board, but I'll
Oh,
make the move.
sorry.
Freeze. Yeah, here I was just thinking I could maybe develop my bishop, and taking my knight on a8 is going to be a little bit hard because if I play my bishop, for example, let's say to d2 or something, I'm sort of, or for not to be in the way of the oh, I guess my pawn on e4 is hanging. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure. It feels this would be pretty dangerous for white as well, just because
yeah.
it might take black some time to win the knight on 8, but this is one of your pieces, right? So even if it's like out of the game, even if black doesn't capture it, that's still kind of a problem. So, I mean, we kind of just got mixed up in all the tactics here. Basically, it certainly happens, especially after losing a pawn. It's like at this point, what do you have to lose? The position's kind of busted, so you might as well try um, something complicated. Sure, there was queen b3 check as well, but I think it kind of runs into the same issues here. Like, if nothing else, black can just bring the knight back and still enjoy like a big advantage. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on any one game. Let me just find another one here. Always takes a second to load. Okay. So next game was against Must Jab.
I believe that was just a chess.com game of 1510 that I played probably recently, at least in 2021.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So we have some kind of weird Sicilian F3. Oh, brutal. Okay. I hope you took advantage of this one. Okay, queenside castling, queen c2, g5, nice. I might have started with h5 just to harass the knight on g3 a bit, but that's okay. Castles, h5. Do you remember this one?
Yes, yes. I think actually this is a more recent game. I think this was only a couple of days ago.
Okay, cool. Yeah, looks like you did everything all right here. Okay, queen d7. You're switching over. 4. g6. Oh wow, somehow we found this endgame. But you should
Yeah,
have.
before I had a really good attacking position, but I feel like I didn't take advantage of a pawn break that I could have had. So, for example, when his knight was on f3, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if we could go back to that point. Um, yeah, here I I think maybe at some point I could have taken on f3 and then played g3, sort of taking advantage of the fact that I'm forcing a pawn break. I'm forking a rook and a pawn, and I'm forcing him to sort of open up the position. When after that, when I tried to switch over the queen to g7, I had no pawn break.
Right, yeah, because he finds this move f4.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably still doing well here. I mean, your position is, you just have so much space. Like, I'm sure you're doing great. Like maybe just even putting the bishop on d5 and taking advantage of the fact that white can't really go c4 because you have knight to d4. And yeah, I think you have like fantastic position chances here. Yeah, like it felt like your attack is so good. I mean, a lot of players would even just play g3 at this moment, which I think is totally reasonable. Um, because whenever if white can't lock it up with h3, right, because of the knight on f2, then it's almost always a good opportunity to play this move because you're forcing the file to open. And this is one of the most, let's call it one of the most useful things for an attacker, is just like open files. And then we want to play either h4, h3, or if the knight blocks on h3, then we'll have like f4, right, and bishop takes h3, and then maybe even like rook hg8 to kind of pile on the pressure. Feels like an overwhelming attack. We just have like so much space in the position. Do you remember during the game, did you have some like aversion to playing g3? Was there some reason you weren't sure about it?
I think maybe I just wanted to make the position as perfect as possible. So I sort of brought in the bishop first, made sure all my pieces were active. And since I didn't see a clear continuation after g3, either after trading the bishop for the knight first or playing g3 immediately, I decided against it, and I went for sort of getting my queen more active. Because I also thought maybe my queen wasn't going to be very active on this diagonal.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think you might be right because like yeah, you could have played g3 there. You can play g3 in this position and take with the bishop, and I would say this also looks extremely good for black because you're kind of breaking down the blockade. You're just gonna go like h4, h3, basically no matter what, and then f4, and white won't be able to kind of hold it. Or you can take on f2 like you said, and then go g3 here, and this also looks fantastic for black. So question about h4. You could start with h4, but the reason I want to start with g4 or with g3 is because while we have the chance to guarantee that we're taking something and that these pawns are getting traded, this is this is why this is kind of the right moment, because there's a rook on f2. White can't lock it up with h3. Then it would be kind of harder to break through. And if the rook moves back, of course, we just take on h2 immediately so that we can have the open file. And then again, we just want to keep breaking things up with like h4, h3. So this is kind of a fundamental principle of attacking chess. You just almost always want as many open lines as possible. And then if the position is open enough, you know, this is the type of position where you start looking for like rook takes g2 type of sacrifices. Sorry if the position is might be jumping around a little bit. I meant to go here. Yeah, so this is the type of position where you just try to open up as many lines as possible. And yeah, you just basically say, well, look, your rooks are on h8, g8. So if the position opens up, I mean, number of pawns doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's all about opening up these rooks against white's king. And if you can do that, then you'll likely find checkmate. So yeah, there's something about wanting to just build up endlessly, because it is nice to get the queen involved. But yeah, the queen was already kind of definitely having an influence in the position on d5. I mean, making it very difficult for white to do much of anything here. So yeah, maybe something to think about. Because it kind of like felt too slow, and then all of a sudden white is like creating counterplay. Probably our position is still good, but who knows, could be messy.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, but then we end up finding this endgame. Rook g5. I think it's okay.
Maybe b6 was better in the position.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely still want to play for activity. Like, my first thought would be just rook e8. Just give the pawn with check, and then leave white with this position, right? And now white has to figure out what to do. Because you can still win, you know, tactically when the queens are off the board. And if this rook gets to e1, that's like a very painful... These back rank pins are often brutal. Like, if there's no obvious way to get out of the pin, that's like a piece that white is eventually losing. So this can be worth a pawn, 2 pawns. Let's just look at this for a sec. So white will go g3, I think, forced. Gotta save the back rank. And then let's say we give check, king g2, and yeah, we just keep it real simple, like bishop e7, just with tempo. And then next move, rook d8. Feels like game over. Maybe rook, let's say rook d5, white tries.
I think maybe you could go to rook to f8 and try to just pile up on the knight.
Yeah, that looks completely winning. Like rook f8, rook f1. And white is just completely tied down. And then there's going to be like even checks and
yeah, g1, pawn on g4.
Yeah. Another way to possibly really make things difficult for white would be to go rook d8 and now trade off this rook and leave white with this pin that they have to deal with. This would be pretty unpleasant too. So a couple of different directions here with this kind of additional idea, like bishop b6 and then maybe some rook g1. But anyway, I think what you did is actually totally fine. Oh, actually, there is king f2 there, so the rook kind of gets kicked around a bit. So yeah, I don't know about that last line. Yeah, I like your move rook f8 better. Yeah.
Yeah, king f2, rook h8, king g2, and I can never win the h2 pawn, I think.
Yeah, the rook actually loses. We're not in time. We needed the bishop on this diagonal first. So yeah, this one actually doesn't quite work. But this move, rook f8, yeah, white's position looks really, really difficult. But I don't think actually that's a big deal. I kind of like how you played it as well, because you just trade off white's most active piece. I like rook e8 a lot, just forcing getting the second rank. And now this is exactly kind of what we want, like just active rook, active bishop. Big advantage. Okay, let's see the technique. D2.
I also wanted to mention that I was pretty low on time here. I usually spend a lot of time in the middle game or in the opening, and then I have very little time for my end game, which is why it's usually messy.
I see. You have the like the 10-second increment, or
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
that's good. That's really helpful. Yeah, yeah, we totally kind of blew this one. I would imagine because of the time. Let's go back. Let's see what happened here, because this felt like we have really, really nice position. Um, yeah, so b6 not really a great sign, just because like the pawn's not hanging on c5, and I get the instinct to just want to defend it, but like, time's ticking, right? You got to get your king in to win the game. Or you can play like c4 and get your bishop in. This would be another way to kind of like improve your position. Or even b5, like b5, c4, like start pushing on the queen side. Because you have like such a huge advantage here with your rook on the 7th rank. Not just like your rook is more active, but your king is also guaranteed more active here because white's king is just cut off. So you basically have like two pieces that are dominating. Even though your king is still back on c8, the fact that it has the ability to get out is huge, and it's going to start walking in. And of course your bishop here is going to be quite good, with pawns on both sides of the board, and the knight doesn't really have such like a safe square here. Knight is definitely a tricky piece in time scrambles, but objectively, yeah, like we have a lot of advantages here. So maybe it feels like we're being ultra careful. Whereas I feel like this is a position where we can kind of just walk in and win. Maybe this way actually would have been interesting. King b7 and then just entering on the dark squares.
Yeah, I think maybe that would have been even a little bit simpler than the plan I tried to adopt, because after king d7, king e6, you have to find a way to get your king in. Meanwhile, the other way is sort of free.
Right. So here, yeah, we ran into some checks. And then, okay, probably a time trouble blunder. That would be my guess here.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it happens. I'm sure you're still very close to winning here, like maybe rook e2 or something. Actually, your idea h4 here makes a lot of sense too, because if takes, you have bishop e5, and you create, after you take on h2, you'll have this really strong g-pawn. So this, yeah, probably was a winning idea. And then if white doesn't take, either you can take on g3, or you can push h3 and then really, really pose a lot of issues for white in that structure.
He also played bishop e5 to try to put a lot of pressure on g3, seeing as he can't take.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. You can just play bishop e5 next move and break through. So yeah, sometimes you need like you just need more time to find
Yeah.
which is, well, that's what rapid is. I mean, it's definitely quicker than classical chess. If this was a classical game, you have more time. You'd have time to kind of like figure it out. So not a big deal. Okay, actually, but we ended up winning the game anyway, which is interesting, I think. Let's see, take. Because white basically gets out, extra pawn. Oh, nice. Wow. Got in with the king and pawn endgame.
Apparently here he's still drawn, which I'm not so sure how that works.
Huh. Yeah, engine's giving like a5, some weird move.
Yeah.
So here, 3.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a5, and then he can sort of bring his king backward, and his a pawn is so advanced that he ends up queening at the same time.
Oh wow, miracle draw.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm sorry, king b7, king b6, here, and yeah, we draw at the same time. Wow. Okay, so yeah, we got a little lucky at the end there, but it happens. King f3, totally natural move for white, and now he's like a tempo too slow on this line. Wow. He played a5 here, that's cool. Take f4, take this one. Nice, nice. Okay, good technique at the end. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, this is your game against Matenen. So we're playing white here. Do you remember this one?
Um, Not quite. I think this was early 2021. I think this was back in January.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, bunch of tactics in this game. H6 and yeah, all over. Okay.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to talk about it too much if you don't really remember what happened. I just kind of want to see how it
No,
went.
I mean it's fine. I remember the analysis, and I also sort of looked over the games before the class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, I went f4 because I thought I had a pretty good space advantage, pretty
Yeah.
good development advantage, and that I could maybe go for a king side attack.
Yeah, f4 is normal.
Um, but after knight to d5 and knight takes, I think maybe I'm giving him too much of an opportunity to activate his queen and sort of centralize it without me being able to um put any pressure on the queen and sort of develop with tempo, which I think maybe was a problem for me in this game. Also losing a queen, but I think in this position after rook e1, I think my position is still okay, even though I'm down a pawn, mainly because he hasn't developed his queen side, and now his queen is in the center and it's sort of subject to attack a little bit.
Yeah, no, you still have some compensation here. Um, though in view of bishop d6, I don't know, maybe I would have preferred like bishop f2. Because you still can get the rook e1 tempo here, but also on bishop d6 you have bishop g3.
Yeah.
Not really sure, but rook e1 here, here, queen f6, and then I guess you could have taken on b5 here. It's kind of it's a nice trick.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. It was a lot better than knight takes c6 because I think then he gets to trade off some of his undeveloped pieces for some of my very developed pieces, like this knight on
Right.
d4 that had moved a lot.
Yeah, and so now bishop takes a7. That's a really interesting moment because
Yeah,
it's like
here I
it's,
thought I was totally winning because I thought I was just winning a rook, but I had missed that he could sort of at least keep me in a draw.
yeah, you can take here and yeah, now this is one of those tough positions where you have like a million moves and it's like hard to know what to calculate.
Yeah,
Um,
especially sort of in a rapid game where I'm already a bit down on the clock because I've had to calculate a lot.
mm-hmm.
It's hard to determine.
Right. Um, yeah, my first thought here was like queen f3 because it's like so hg queen takes c6. Okay, we kind of saw how that plays out. White's king is just ends up too weak there. Queen f3 is a nice move because it's like you don't take on b8 until black starts taking some material as well, and then you hold on to this kind of like more important light squared bishop. So I'll show you guys how the game went. It was hg, queen takes, bishop takes here, and yeah, basically like very difficult position for white. Like already bishop b7 is quite annoying. Black tried queen b6, which was also okay, and then after king f1, like this was a deadly attack. I guess you could have done something different here, like king king
G3,
g2, I
G2,
guess.
sir. Yeah.
Yeah, because king h2 we run into queen f2, so probably king g2. Um, and then, I mean, the position is still messy. Like, black can just take on b8, and he has like a bunch of compensation for the exchange. Maybe white is better, but it's difficult. Um, so yeah, we often want to look for some kind of like stabilizing move, like a queen f3, because then maybe we get the queens off the board, and as long as black's rook on b8 is hanging, you know, we're kind of know like you're never going to be down material here. Like bishop takes e1, we can maybe take on f6 first, take on b8, one of these moves. Let's try this. Then feels like it's kind of safe for you.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah, these decisions are always tough, especially with limited time. Okay, yeah, you could argue also e5 maybe a little bit early, because you're left with this kind of isolated pawn. I don't know if black really reacted in the best possible way here, but yeah, I'm not sure about this move. It might be kind of early here. A lot of players would start either with a3 to stop b4, so you don't lose your e4 pawn, or like bishop f3 might be possible as well. Kind of setting up e5, maybe under better circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a big expert in this opening, but yeah, just something to consider. But let's go to another one. Because really this is about just getting a sense of your play, not really like having to analyze every single game to death. Okay, next one here, we're facing the French. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, this was played at an online tournament, I think a couple of months ago. A local online tournament. I think the time control was 25-10 or something like that.
Cool. Okay, looks like we just won a pawn here. So that was good. Okay, get these double pawns, doesn't really matter. King d2. Huh. Alright, we traded off the rooks. We'll get back to this. King d2 definitely strikes me as an odd move. I get that you're trying to stop rook e2. But a lot of players would notice like rook e2 is not really even a threat because of black's back rank.
Okay, yeah.
Right, because like rook e2, you can meet that with knight f4. Or knight c3, and black would have to go back. I don't know, it seems wrong to kind of get in the way of your own rook, just my feeling.
So what other way do you think I should proceed in this position?
Yeah, that's a good question. So maybe a3, b3, or even both, just to kind of slowly get some space on the queen side, and then you don't have to worry about your back rank, and your king can kind of advance as well. Yeah, another possible idea would be to like just bring the knight back to e3. And then you just kind of shore up the rook, and then you just control this one open d file.
Okay.
And then again, just kind of slowly advancing on the queen side, because you're basically winning this on the queen side, because you have an extra pawn here, right? Potential passer, and then your king is also much closer to the action, so it's like you have an extra piece basically. So as long as you just keep the situation under control, like basically should be winning this one pretty handily. The double pawns are ugly, but black doesn't really have time to do anything to them. So king d2, I don't know, it's probably fine. It just kind of strikes me as going in like slightly the wrong direction, because now your king is on e2, like defending your weaknesses, but it should actually be on your queen side supporting your pawns, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but then you make absolutely correct decision to trade rooks and simplify into this knight endgame where you have extra pawn and just huge advantage. King comes in. So now I feel like you're in control. But somehow... Oh, wow. Yeah, we kind of get into trouble here.
Yeah.
Wow, so this turned around very, very quickly. Um, yeah, I feel like this shouldn't have happened. I mean, your king is on e3, and then like 3 moves later, black's king is on d5, and you haven't made any progress.
That's why
Right?
sort of I selected this game because it's a game where I was better since the opening, but I failed to convert because I misplayed the endgame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like maybe seeing kind of a pattern where you have like this advantage and then are not capitalizing on it in maybe the most like concrete way. Or let's say the most like, because it doesn't have to be concrete. Let's say you're not kind of like not pulling the trigger in some of these positions. Because this is definitely feels like something where we should be much better, even if we weren't up a pawn. Just the fact that our king is like much closer to the center and our knight is a little bit more active is kind of nice. But with the extra pawn, then I think it should really be a decent position. So one idea would be to just immediately go after the a6 pawn with something like knight b4, because if you get these pawns to push forward, then they kind of become easier to attack, like a5, knight c6, for example. And then a4, knight d4, just as a sample line. So black, of course, can't trade knights. That would just be totally losing. Has to play something passive like knight to c7. Now you can start bringing in your king with king to e4, or you can slide over this way and head towards b4. And this seems like you're winning this pretty easily.
Yeah, I think that's sort of one of the main things I missed in this game, that I have this 3-2 majority on the queen side and that I failed to sort of put my efforts into creating a pass pawn on that side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is kind of like our winning plan here. Basically, just making a pass pawn, either trading knights, winning the king and pawn endgame, or making a pass pawn and converting that. So another very logical move here after king e8, because it seemed like what happened was like you couldn't play king d4, and then king e4 you don't really see like where the king is going, so you decide to play b4, like maybe fixing the weaknesses. But the problem was like this knight on e6 is just kind of in your way, so like another logical move is knight f4, just challenging the knight, knowing that black can't allow a trade, so black has to give ground. And this is why knight endgames are often compared to like king and pawn endgames. This is kind of like a general principle. Like knight endgames are often very similar because when you have these two knights that are kind of fighting for space, a lot of times they get into each other's way, and whoever has the advantage in the king and pawn endgame can always allow a knight trade, right? You're always okay with a knight trade, and that means that the other knight now has to move away and give up space. So now black has to play like knight c5 or something, or knight g5. Knight g5 probably a blunder. We just kick the knight with h4 and nowhere to go.
Yeah, trade.
Yeah, it has to trade. And then if knight c7 or knight c5, then the king starts walking in. And once your king gets in the range of like d5, king c6, then it's all over because the pawns are just going to fall. The king is just such a powerful piece here. So yeah, just lacking a little bit of like killer instinct in some of these endgames where if your king just gets in, it's basically going to be decisive. In this game, actually, one of the previous games too, like when you had your rook on the 7th rank as black, and you had the bishop and you had like the king. If you just got your king in, I think you win that one really easily.
Yeah.
And then yeah, here actually we could have traded knights with knight f4, but now it might be your other game where your opponent traded into this and up a pawn but totally losing. So it was good we avoided that, but now black gets super active. We play a4. So we do create this passer, but black gets their counterplay. Now it's like kind of unclear.
Yeah, and after that, I just missed a knife work where he would
Mm-hmm.
sort of get rid of one of my queenside pawns, and I'm absolutely lost here.
Yeah. Yeah, knight is just stuck. Um, looks like his technique was good. Okay. Yeah. So basically, they're just kind of not going in when we had the moment, but otherwise, like a very very well played game, I thought. So yeah, you are playing solid. Just have to work on your technique a little bit, and we'll talk about that. But let's look at some more games. Okay, next game we're playing white. Is this your main repertoire, Grand Prix attack?
Yeah.
Cool, cool. Okay, and do you remember this one? What was the time control here?
Pretty sure this was just a 15-10 game.
Gotcha. Oh wow, interesting pawn sack. Nice. Get it back. We won the piece. So yeah, good tactics here. Our queen is hanging. I guess could have taken as well. Actually, just simple. Knight takes. Take on e8, let's say. And because you're hitting the other rook, he has to take back.
Yeah, I had failed to see this, but
I
sort of
mean,
threatening the other rook.
what you did it, I think, is also good. Does he have a move? Oh, he has knight d6. Sorry, I missed this one. Okay, so you could have held, actually, somehow. Although, I have a feeling you would still find a way to win this game, because black is under serious pressure. So queen c8, okay, we take this one. And now we just trade everything off. Okay, g3. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Oh, no. We blew this one. Oh, no. Okay, I'm glad you sent me this game. You know, Gustavo, a lot of people that come on the show, they try not to send me their embarrassing games. They try to, like, they curate them. But I'm glad you sent me this one, because this shows exactly the problem. You were, like, completely winning.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you realize you're winning, you start making, like, these really kind of like passive moves. Actually, like g3 was already like totally unnecessary. Like you can calculate rook e1, you're threatening the back rank, right? You're 2600 in tactics. So start with this move, you know,
Yeah.
and then force black to like weaken their back ranks, or to weaken, you know, h6 somehow, and then, you know, and then you'll find knight h4, like the pawn's not even hanging. I mean, you have like a million ways of winning this position with the extra piece. So I think we're being really, really cautious. Even if you're low on time with the 10-second increment, it should be enough to find like a reasonable move that's not like ultra passive. Because it feels like you are kind of going into like turtle mode. Like here, like with Queen E2, like there's not really a whole lot black can do to you. You know, a lot of players, they just play King F2 here. And then, okay, you can see like there's no checks. If your king is next to the knight, you're always kind of safe. You'll always be able to block with the queen or something. So like with an extra piece, you have a lot of room. There's no way you get mated here. You know, there's like nothing black can really do to you. Maybe you can blunder all your pawns, but only if you're super super careful. That's kind of how we start blundering, because then as your time ticks down, you know, you get more and more nervous. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. You know, it happens to everyone. Um, but yeah, we got to be more decisive. And now this one is, yeah, now it just gets too tricky, and it's like it's kind of like it's not clear what we're playing for, because we start playing well, I think, with like knight g6 and f5, but then we go back to like passive, and then it ends up just getting super messy, and then
Yeah.
yeah, blunder happens.
I
Um,
sort of fixated on this idea that I was gonna play something like not Queen D5, but just the mate in general on on f8 with the queen, the knight, and the pawn. And I failed to realize that in this position, just queen d5 would be a winning king and pawn endgame with the knight.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a good point. I think a lot of us, when we're low on time, we kind of tunnel vision and we see one idea, one possible checkmate, and we try to set it up. But the reality is, yeah, you probably have like 5, 6 different plans that win this position. Like putting the knight on f4 and then playing like queen h5 check might be super strong. Or the simplest way, like you said, is just queen d5, like just trading queens. Any queen trade, and you should be winning easily. Especially in a time scramble, trading queens is nice because then you can start like making very very quick moves and you can convert those easily. So yeah, it's important to remind yourself like there's many ways you can win this one, and any queen trade is good. And yeah, once you play c4, then actually yeah, it's kind of all over. Like queen f3, queen d5, that would have been good. Okay, so yeah, something we'll definitely talk about, but let's look at. I think we have a couple more games to go through. Okay, next one you are playing white.
Sorry?
I think you're playing white in this one.
Yeah, yeah. This
Okay,
was I believe this was a game I played in over the board tournament about a year ago.
cool.
Against a 1620 feeder.
Okay, cool. So this over the board, nice.
Yes. 90-30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Winterwear is a tough opening, but you handled it well. Got the dark squares. Oh, but he has some counterplay. And oh, had check and takes. Oops. Oh wow. Wow, this game is like full of surprises. So he goes here. Probably should have just like pulled the bishop back. So he misses this one. Very nice. Take here. Okay, now you get your king to safety. And you don't trade queens. Good. Absolutely correct decision there not to trade queens because his king is way weaker than yours. Even though you have the extra exchange. Wow. Crazy game. Nice, nice. And then 2 queens always stop the checks. Cool. Wow, what a crazy game. I like this plan of this like queen g7, queen h6. It's so fun.
Yeah, I was surprised over the board that I could sort of win the exchange kind of force. But after an analysis, I realized that the exchange isn't worth that much in this position. Mainly because of my weak f2 pawn.
Yeah, unfortunately, black ends up getting like a ton of compensation for it, so maybe it wasn't even the best thing to do. Although I do think here you are solid enough. Maybe the bishop should have gone to e2. This is kind of a typical way of trying to defend against the knight on e5. Um, but oh, sorry, I'm looking at a different line here. I was looking at this one, but yeah, this was like the ultimate like don't trade queens game because you avoided it here and then you avoided it later as well. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, of course there are other ways of playing the position too. Let me check out this last game. And okay, here we're playing black. Or are you a King's Indian player?
I actually can't see the position on the board. It takes a little bit
Oh,
for it to load.
sorry.
Um, King's Indian. I think that was a game with C4, right? With the English.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. I usually play the Grunfeld, but I couldn't find a way to get in the Grunfeld, so I just played the King's Indian with C5,
I see.
which was the part of my repertoire before.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of Grunfeld players they play d5 in this position, and there are some lines here. It's pretty similar to a Grunfeld. You still play bishop g7. You try to take the knight on c3, and kind of similar play. So you could definitely do that one. But okay, there's nothing wrong with the King's Indian either. So h3, and then it actually goes into Benoni basically with d5 and e6. So e6 is a good move. How do you feel about these kinds of Benoni positions in general?
Typically, I like them because I usually play the dragon with black, the Sicilian dragon. So I feel very comfortable, very at home with the sort of c5 pawn and the fianchetto dark sword bishop.
Mm,
That's mainly why I used to play the c5 King's Indian, but I changed over.
I see. Why did you switch?
I started getting unfavorable results with the C5 King's Indian, and I sort of realized that some lines looked at master games and everything, and did not like the positions that Black got out of the opening.
Okay. Um, yeah, no, you're doing quite fine in this one. I mean, this endgame was, of course, endgame got super messy, but well, let's see this rook endgame. Oh, nice. I took that one. And then, oh no, you got to bring the king back.
Yeah, here after C7, apparently King C3 was um was drawn because I could push my rook to C6 and then go behind the rook, play King B6 and take the pawn.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing idea. Yeah, I wouldn't have found this one either. At least not in a blitz game. Um, oh well. So let's go back though. Actually, I really liked your position. Like bishop g5, queen b6. He gives up the dark squared bishop. Um, and then you went for this. So you actually end up winning a pawn, but like he gets some counterplay.
Yeah, my queen side is very underdeveloped,
Right, right. So
and
I
I feel
don't
like
know.
development also isn't very natural for me. I mean, my late squared bishop, it's very hard to see where it's going. If it goes to d7, it's blocking my knight. If it goes to f5, it's gonna get kicked away with g4. My
Mm-hmm.
knight is also sort of kind of clumsy, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with this position that can happen is that your minor pieces fight for the same squares. Although trading off one or two of them usually makes this task a lot easier. So in this case, you can develop the knight like knight to a6, knight c7, or knight d7, knight e5, or knight d7, knight b6, and then the bishop can come out. So I do think you actually have a good version here. This is okay, although my instinct in this kind of position would be not to give up the dark square bishop, for kind of like, because it's not like a healthy extra pawn. You have to deal with some initiative, and instead maybe playing for this like a6 b5 plan. So like on queen c2, maybe like a6 first to cover the b5 square, white castles, and then like queen c7. Then you try to play b5, or you try to bring the knight to like d7 and e5. And I'd actually just try to keep your dark squared bishop alive. I mean, you probably understand the power of this one quite well, but that's just a small thing, not hugely important. Um, But yeah, okay, Gustav. I think I'm ready to make this diagnosis. Um, I definitely feel like, yeah, you gotta be. I think maybe trying to play a little bit more aggressively in some cases, like especially when you have the advantage and you're trying to like convert a position. Feels like you're being a little bit too careful in that process. That can be a really good thing in many cases because you kind of like can restrict your opponent's counterplay, but there is kind of a balance to it, and there can be a point where it becomes too much, and you just need to go for the kill and finish the game. Um, so the way to work on this, I mean, partly it's psychological. You have to kind of consciously maybe even remind yourself, like when you have an advantage, you need to like focus and try to convert it as efficiently as possible. Um, and another thing you can do is maybe study some games of like some attacking players, because then I think you'll see how they can really you'll see how they kind of finish off positions. You know, they find like combinations, they find a way to like mate the king. Even if they're doing well, they always want to find a way to just like completely open up the position, you know, destroy the shelter in front of their opponent's king and just deliver mate. So a couple of good books are the attacking manuals from Jakob Agard are pretty well considered. But there's also lots of attacking players worth studying, like Tal and Kasparov, Shirov, all these guys, like super interesting players. I'm sure there's tons of content like on YouTube as well of people just going through like games of like famous attacking players. Um, I feel like that would be the thing, because yeah, it feels like you're yeah, nowadays Dubov is is a really good player to look at as well. Because it does feel like your calculation is probably all right. Um, and so yeah, I just want to put you in a better position to use it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I sort of noticed when picking my games that I usually tend to have a really good position and then just not be able to convert it because I get too passive.
Right, right. And yeah, I mean, another thing you can do actually, I think is really useful is it would be to actually watch some high level blitz players and try to pay attention to how they convert in the end game, because you have all these guys like, you know, Hikaru and Danya that are like super fast, and even when they have like 30 seconds left on their clock or a minute left, they're still converting these like tricky end games and finding ways to win. And they're not always winning. They don't like play perfectly, but you'll kind of see what ideas they look for to finish the game. And you'll see things like them just bringing in the king, like rushing the king and rook end games, trying to activate the king in every position, trying to create passed pawns, trying to, you know, sacrifice a pawn so another pawn can break through. So you'll definitely get some ideas in terms of technique and the conversion and how to finish off a lot of these games. You can also go on YouTube and find lots of videos of people playing Blitz, like in person, actually. Like World Blitz Championship. Magnus is obviously like insanely good Blitz player. Yeah, actually, forget everyone else. Just watch Magnus play some Blitz. His technique is very good, and his instincts are incredible. Maybe that could be a fun project for you. Like watch some of his Blitz games and then go and analyze the end game and see like did he play it accurately, or did his opponent, you know, miss some defense, or what happened there. I think that would give you some really good insight in how these players often, because they're not trying to just convert the end game, they're trying to convert it quickly in a lot of cases, because they of course just don't have a lot of time left on their clock, and so they don't have time to calculate something complicated. They just have to find a very practical and natural idea.
Yeah, I actually kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that I think maybe might be a problem. And funnily enough, I learned it from Chess Strategy for Club Players. He says that when you're in an endgame, you shouldn't necessarily look for moves like for or calculate a line. You should look for plans and
Mm,
sort of compare plans and try to decide which plan is best, which I think maybe could have a lot to do with my conversion. And also, um in terms of like Blitz streams, I believe Naroditsky has a series on YouTube, Speedrun to 3000, where he sort of plays Blitz games against categories from, lower levels, my levels, and sort of tries to go up to 3000, which I think maybe could be helpful in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those videos are really instructive. That's a good point about like the end game and thinking about how to convert it. It is very useful to get, let's say, like a schematic picture of what you're aiming for, because then yeah, it's like you don't really have to calculate move by move. You just know like, okay, you want your rook on the second rank, you want to pass pawn, you want an active king in the center, you want to bring your knight to this outpost, or you want to bring your bishop to this diagonal. If even when you're low on time, if you can get some kind of sense of the scheme you're looking for, where are like what's the best spot for all of your pieces, that can actually help you make decisions very very quickly because you know where everything is supposed to go.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a really important point about the end game. And in classical chess, it's important to kind of spend time to kind of plan it out, like long term, like where you want to position everything. And then over time, you'll build up these instincts. Like you'll just kind of know exactly where everything needs to go, what your pawns should do, which squares you need to control, whether to put them on the same color of your bishop or opposite color, or which weaknesses to fix. How to create squares for all your pieces. This will kind of just become like second nature once you have enough of this experience. So, well, with most players, I mean, there's lots of stuff you can work on. I like the book that you're reading. At some point, it would be useful for you to read some endgame books as well. Just like in the future, the book Endgame Strategy, total classic by Shereshevsky. There are others as well that I'm a fan of, but that's always been the one that kind of teaches a lot of the fundamental principles of how to play typical in-game positions and kind of the style. Um,
Yeah. In terms of endgame books, I've read one. I read Endgame Workshop by Bruce Pandolfini.
oh, cool.
I don't know if you recognize it, but that's sort of the only thing I've studied, and I studied it a couple of I actually think it was like about a year ago,
Mm.
so I should maybe get on that.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't seen it, so I couldn't tell you. But
Mhm.
yeah, at some point, it's, I mean, often very useful just to see some like classic end games and get an idea for how a lot of these positions are played, where everything should go, what to do with the pieces, what to exchange, and these kinds of plans. That's just kind of, I think, useful for, yeah, basically universally all players. Um, so yeah, I mean, you're in great shape, Gustavo. You're playing frequently. You're doing your tactics. You're analyzing your games. You're reading books and like learning about strategy. You're involved in the game. It's very important to like really spend a lot of time with the game, a lot of time over the board. Working through positions or analyzing something, analyzing your games, playing. These are the things that give you like this long-term experience where you truly become like a chess player. How long have you even been playing, by the way?
So I technically began playing when I was little, but I sort of only went to scholastic tournaments, and I only got to about 1,000 online playing strength. And but I took the game back up about a year ago, I think it was on October of
Oh, that's right.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you haven't been like serious for all that long. Honestly, it's like, and chess is such a deep game. There are so many ideas that it really takes time, um, to make like tons and tons of progress. But you're on the right track. I think you're in really really good shape. Just got to keep trucking, like keep playing, and the way it works is like you work hard for several months, and then eventually like it clicks in. It's rarely, let's say, linear, like you go up and up and up, like every week you gain some points, but rather over time everything starts to kind of settle in and click in, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're like a much stronger player than you were a few months ago. So as long as you
Yeah,
keep
I've
putting in those
noticed.
hours, it'll happen. Yeah.
I've noticed that that happens a lot when I'm playing online. I won't make any progress for a couple months, and then I'll go up like 100 points in a week, which it just confuses me. But it's
Yeah,
just
very typical. I don't know why it happens, but yeah, it's very common. You work for a while and then all of a sudden you shoot up. So the important thing is to just like keep working, keep kind of investigating and like exploring the game, trying to read books that you find interesting, trying to study players that you find interesting. You know, just and there's so much content out there that like if something's not really like clicking with you, just find another something to watch because there's so much good stuff out there and so many good teachers that you can learn from. Um, any other questions before we wrap up?
no, I think I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely, it was great to have you. Thanks for doing the show and sharing your games. I hope the advice has been useful. And the idea of the show is to one day maybe check in with you again in a couple months, see how you're doing, see if you were able to incorporate any of the stuff we just talked about, and then yeah, see where you're at in a few months.
Absolutely. Yeah. I welcome that idea.
Okay, cool. I look forward to it. Well, thank you so much, Gustavo. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks everyone for tuning in. This show is weekly, Thursdays, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time to 5 p.m. And yeah, we work with a new player every week, break down their games, and try to give them some tips for the future. You can catch previous episodes of this on my YouTube channel, and this one will be going up there as well.